Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching NDTV. There's a wider war that is playing out in West Asia, from Hamas to Hezbollah and now Iran. Powerful blasts have rocked Lebanon overnight in some of the heaviest Israeli strikes on the capital city of Beirut so far, so that the Lebanese health ministry has reported 37 killed and over 151 wounded in the bombing attacks across the country in the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has led Friday prayers in Tehran today. This was a rare occasion, and this was following a commemoration ceremony for slain Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah that drew thousands of people. Now, his speech was watched for any indication of Iran's plans after Monday's missile attack on Israel. We know that India has already said that it is important that the conflict doesn't take a wider regional dimension and that all issues be addressed through dialogue and diplomacy. So the question that we ask tonight is, if this is the actual inflection point, does West Asia need the intervention of major world powers for peace? How will Israel's offensive in Lebanon escalate the conflict? How will Israel respond to Iran's attack? Very simply said, Iran has struck Israel, but what's next? So joining me now is Meera Shankar, who's a former ambassador of India to the United States. We have also little Shimesh, who is an Israeli journalist, also news anchor Channel 14. And we also have Dr. Umair Anas, who is an assistant professor in Turkey. Thank you all of you for joining me on this show. To you, Ms. Meera ma'am, first, everyone is talking about how this Iranian missile attack on Israel can lead to a larger conflict in Middle East. But clearly, this is a full-blown multi-party West Asia conflict now. How do you see this ending, and what kind of larger geopolitical consequences can we are we expecting?
Well, I'm not sure I can see it ending at the moment. I think everything is going to depend on how Israel responds to the Iranian attack. The Iranians have basically said that this is a response to the killing of Ismail Haniyeh and Nasrallah, the Hezbollah leader, and the Hamas leader in Israel, in Iran. And they have taken this decision after careful consideration. Initially, they exercised restraint because they thought there could be a ceasefire, and the US assured them that a ceasefire was imminent, but no ceasefire has been achieved. And so, with the expansion of the conflict into Lebanon, they have taken a considered response. Now, the question is, how is Israel going to respond to this? And if it is limited, as it was in the past, it could end there with Iran while it continues in Lebanon and in Gaza. But if it, in a sense, attacks Iranian strategic facilities,
right,
I think there is a chance that it could escalate.
Right.
The Western countries have said they support the US, they support Israel's right to respond, to defend itself, but the response should be proportionate.
Right.
And President Joe Biden has further clarified that he would not support an attack on Iranian nuclear facilities.
Right.
Now, the other options, they could attack oil facilities, they could attack military facilities,
right,
non-nuclear military facilities.
So that's an interesting, point. Little Shimesh, you are a journalist in Israel. Tell us how are the people of Israel looking at this? Because a lot is being said about Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, wanting to use this opportunity to in some ways dismantle, or at least make an attempt to dismantle Iran's nuclear program. That's what Meera Shankar was also talking about. Tell us, but of course that's deeply entrenched. How are people of Israel looking at this escalation? How is, Mr. Netanyahu's support base? In fact, how do you look at his support base? In fact, has it been amplified? Are people of Israel in support of this escalation in terms of military action?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I have to say, in the past year, we've been seeing Iran proxies firing at Israel from the Gaza Strip, from Hamas. We've seen rockets from Hezbollah up north in Lebanon. Yemen was firing Israel. Iraq was firing Israel. And just 2 days ago, we've seen almost 200 missiles were firing at Israel from Iran. So to be honest, these past 2 weeks was quite a relief for Israelis that they could see Benjamin Netanyahu, they could see the government of Israel and the IDF finally responding to the continuously barrage that we were getting from Lebanon and from Hamas and from Iran. We saw the pagers operations. We saw Israel starting to take down heads of Hezbollah. And to be honest, it's not just the people of Israel, it's the people of the West and the people of the Middle East that are literally cheering and thanking Netanyahu. Hezbollah was taking part of the massacre in Syria. They were supporting the Assad regime as they were massacring people during the civil war in Syria. Hezbollah heads had a bounty on their heads by the American administration because they were committing suicide attacks, bombing attacks, killing American civilians, killing French civilians. So the matter of fact is that Israel is making or creating a new order, not just for peace, to achieve some sort of a peace, of some sort of a peace of quiet for the upcoming years for Israel, but actually for the countries around us. And I have to tell you, as we speak, Americans and British armies are attacking in Yemen harbor as we speak. So we need to fight and to fight this together. Both British Air Force and American Air Force were helping Israel to eliminate the rockets that came from Iran just the other day.
Right.
And it's a good question. I'm not sure if Israel is going to attack the nuclear facilities of Iran, but I'm sure that there'll be some sort of damage or a hit or trying to take down some of the oil and gas facilities of Iran.
Right. Dr. Omar, Anas, today the world saw Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, lead the Friday prayers. In fact, this is happening after 2020. It's a rare occasion. And it was also watched very keenly to get indications of how Iran would react to this. What is your understanding of Iran's military capabilities? And also, what are the big takeaways from, the Supreme Leader's speech today? Was it a show of defiance, and should it be seen as a threat? How do you see this?
Well, let me start from saying that the thing is that Netanyahu has been over-relying on his military tactics against Palestine. So he has been selling this idea that his war against Palestine is actually a war on terror. And I think that Europeans and most of course, the Middle Eastern countries have stopped buying this rhetoric of Netanyahu. And gradually we can see a sense of exhaust and tiring in Europe, that Israeli rhetoric is becoming a kind of liability for them because they don't see any exit plan in Netanyahu's policies about Palestine. So the more he is going to expand this war, there will be greater crisis in the region. And most of the countries who are quite friendly with Israel and Americans and Europeans, they are getting closer to Russia and China, and they are trying to have their own policies to come out from this crisis. And fortunately, you can see that this time Iran has been along with this Middle Eastern bloc. So in all previous crises, if you can see that Iran has been told that you are outsider, you should stay outside of Palestinian crisis. Turks were also told that you are outsider, you have to stay outside. But in this crisis, you can see that both Turkish and Israel and Iranians, they have been welcomed by the region, and they have been including in all consultations. So in this way, if we see Ayatollah Khamenei's speech, he is quite confident that Israel has to go back, has to reduce its war and come to a ceasefire point.
Right. Meera Shankar, with Israel and Iran on the brink of war, where do things stand for India? Because there is also a lot of concern here, and this has been an era of war, at least in this part of the world. And now clearly the stakes are also high because India has been investing in this part of the world for strategic purposes, lucrative relationships in West Asia. Of course, we've not really talked about being a mediator as we saw in the case of Ukraine and Russia, but we've been a friend to both Israel and Palestine. So where does India stand now, and what should be the position that India should be taking?
India believes that every effort should be made to prevent the situation from escalating into an all-out war, that there must be space for diplomacy and dialogue to bring an end to the conflict through a ceasefire, a hostage deal, and perhaps a longer-term agreement on peace. So that is our position. We actually face quite a lot of adverse consequences if this spills over into an all-out conflict. The first, and we are already feeling the impact, is the price on energy, which has now gone up to over $70 per barrel, the price of oil, which impacts our balance of payments, impacts domestic inflation. Secondly, if the Houthis start attacking shipping in the Red Sea and the Gulf, then that means that ships begin to go around the Cape of Good Hope. Insurance costs increase, freight costs increase for India's exports, particularly to the West. And finally, of course, our overseas Indians, there are about 9 million overseas Indian nationals in the Gulf region whose remittances are important for India's overall balance of payments. And that could get impacted if there is a rush to be evacuated out of the region. Finally, all the ambitious projects for investment in the region, even the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, all these get impacted. India also gets a large amount of investment from Gulf countries. All this could get impacted. So for India, the stakes are very high, and we would hope that some way can be found to limit the conflict.
Okay, that's a very valid point. Little Shimesh, also help us understand how has life for people of Israel changed, because this has been a very difficult 1 year for you people. And also, do you think that there'll be more support for you from the West, considering that Israel was also under so much scrutiny and criticism for what is happening in Gaza?
I think it's very important to understand, because I'm hearing the talk about a ceasefire. Israel did not open this war. We were attacked by Hamas, a terror group organization controlling the Gaza Strip, on October 7th. They've entered Israel. They've butchered over 1,200 people, raped our women, beheaded people. We did not start this war. Hezbollah in Lebanon joined this war on October 8th. And every day that we're speaking, we're getting hundreds of rockets by Hezbollah. This whole thing is being orchestrated by Iran. Iran is the one funding it. Iran is the one orchestrating it, organizing it. Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis in Yemen are basically Iran's proxies. So if you're talking about a ceasefire, Iran could stop this in one decision. Israel wants peace. Israel wants to live here peacefully. I was hearing the speech of Khamenei today in Iran. He was creating more propaganda, telling his people we need to eliminate the state of Israel. So you have to understand, Israel doesn't even have a border with Iran. So this whole regime, instead of taking care of its own people, the wealth of the Iranian people who are pretty miserable at the moment, he is using 40 minutes of his speech to talk about and incite against the only one Jewish country in the Middle East. And I want to ask you and your viewers, ask yourself why. How come Israel is being attacked by 7 Muslim countries at the same time. We
Right.
did not ask for this war. We're not seeking for a war. We're just dealing for so many years, for decades, with so many countries who would love to see
Right.
Israel wiped off the map. And we're just here to protect ourselves.
Right. Dr. Anas, last word from you, sir, because there has been also, a lot of speculation around the role of the U.S. The elections are coming up. There could be a possible change. As possibly there wouldn't be any change. But of course, there's going to be a new precedent there. And Joe Biden's overriding concern was also about preventing this all-out conflagration in this region. And in some ways, Israel also went out of anybody's hand for that matter. U.S. was also held complicit in, this escalation of war because, especially, like I said, what was happening in Gaza. Tell us how do you see the role of U.S. also in some ways influencing what is going to happen next?
In fact, my understanding is that if President Trump is Trump is elected as president, he will be more effective to bring some peace and stability, because he was the person who had started the Abraham Accord, and he had reached out to the regional countries, Saudi Arabia especially, and the UAE, and had spoken with them about the prospects of Abraham Accord. So he had a lot of stakes in that process. And in this war, the Abraham Accord has been effectively buried. So I think that he would have a special interest in reviving that process and asking Israel to go back and to seek peace and stability with the region. My understanding is that the problem is with Israeli politics and rhetoric is that they want the world to see this entire episode just in this season. The crisis has so many seasons, and it starts from 1948 when the United Nations Security Council gave nations to the two people. So the first country got the nation and state and the borders, and the second country is still waiting for its state. Right. So if Israelis think that they have to see the season just this season, then it will be a mistake. So we have to see the picture in its entirety.
Right. Completely out of time. Thank you all of you for joining me on this broadcast. Clearly, a year that began with Hamas's devastating attack in Israel has only spiraled into what we are looking at, a bigger conflict involving many more players, triggering many more waves of violence in Lebanon, and of course, several people killed, and clearly no end in sight. We'll keep tracking that for you. But my colleague Maria Shakil spoke to the envoy of Iran today, and he had some very interesting points. Let's listen in to that conversation.
We are being joined by Dr. Iraj Elahi, Iranian ambassador to India. Ambassador Elahi, thank you so much for speaking to NDTV.
Thank you for having me.
First question, and that's on everybody's mind. At a time when Iranian leadership have been targeted, this address, a rare sermon by the Supreme Leader Khomeini, what does it actually mean? What is he trying to communicate and convey?
Supreme Leader is the highest military commander of Iran. Highest military commander of Iran. Not only the political leader, he is, all the Iranian military forces are under the command of Supreme Leader, according to our constitution. So when Supreme Leader talk and his words, in this case, it is serious. Serious meaning for Iranian and though concerning sides.
And how is Iran looking at protecting its military and nuclear installations, and of course also of oil reserves from almost what seems like an imminent Israeli strike?
We hope that Israel has learned enough, has learned a good lesson and enough from the recent events. Israel committed a crime inside Iran, so we retaliated. And if it repeat anything, its crimes inside Iran, it will receive more powerful strike by Iran. So the entity of our retaliation and the main goal of our retaliation was to deter Israel from doing and repeating such these crimes.
But Ambassador, the United States is reportedly discussing the possibility of Israel striking Iranian oil sites, and warnings of that nature has been shared as well. So, are you prepared to protect these oil reserves? Because despite sanctions, oil reserves have been very intrinsic to your economic prosperity, and you have used it almost like as a weapon, and you have continued with your trade with Russia, China.
Yeah, it's a good question. We are, in military there is a passive and active defense. Sometimes when we strike Israel, our defense was active. We defended ourselves, our territory, by striking Israel actively. But at the same time, we have capability to defend our national interest, our assets passively. I mean, we are able to defend our installations.
Many are of the opinion that this has reached a point where diplomacy is not even in discussion. Iran and Israel are face to face. So, what is the outcome of this escalation? How do you view it?
We are not with war. We are against war. We did not start this game. This is a game. This is a game which will result, destroy, and too many casualties, destroy of Iran, destroy of Israel. We are not with war. We are against war. But at the same time, we cannot be indifferent regarding our national interest. We are not indifferent regarding our national security. We will defend and we will strike harmful, we will hit and strike harmfully to our enemy.
One view is that...
but diplomacy is the best way. So
you're still hopeful for a diplomatic
of course.
way forward?
Of course. In the first round, after the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, we were ready to retaliate, but we received some messages from United States that there is a negotiation for ceasefire in the region, so we postpone our retaliation. We postpone this retaliation.
Okay.
So we believe that if Israel stop its invasion and violation in the region, the escalation will be stopped.
So, Ambassador, when you say that you stopped this retaliation, does that mean that Iran had communicated to United States that there would be retaliation by Iran after the killing of the Hezbollah chief?
We do have.
So there are back-channel communications which are on.
We do have our channel with United States through different. And we receive message. We send message to them. It doesn't mean that there is no communication between Iran and United States. They have sent message, and we postponed our retaliation.
Okay, so because US told you to do so, you postponed the retaliation.
US said that there is a negotiation and for ceasefire. We postponed this retaliation for ceasefire.
Okay. Iran...
it doesn't mean that we postpone our retaliation because of the request of United States. We postpone to reach to ceasefire. We could ignore our retaliation on the benefit of the region. But when Netanyahu rejected ceasefire and denied and did not accept ceasefire, there was no option for Iran just to retaliate.
You know, you have Netanyahu saying clearly that Iran has made a big mistake after those 200 missiles which were launched towards Israel, and he has gone on to say that Iran will pay the price.
Yeah.
So what is the way forward? So will there be some kind of preemptive strike now?
No. First of all, it shows that to which extent the strike of Iran was painful for Israel. You know, despite of the censorship in Israel, it proved that our strike hit Israel and military bases of Israel, and it was really damaged. We just targeted intelligence service of intelligence installation and establishment of Israel, plus ammunition of Israel, not citizens, not the residential area, despite of their propaganda. But we are not supporting escalation. We support de-escalation of the situation, and we hope that they will not enter a new round and a new circle of tension between Iran and Israel.
All right. Since you say that you're hoping for de-escalation, Ambassador Elahi, thank you so much for speaking to NDTV.
Let me thank you for. I hope that here, may I add that India is an important country. We hope that this is a good opportunity for India to play a role in this field. I hope that India will use its influence, its capability for de-escalation in the region, and convinced Israel to stop its genocide in Gaza and not escalate the situation.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for speaking to NDTV.
Thank you for you and your audience.